Hey guys, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are in a different setup and it's the video that I've been waiting for. It's the purple eyeshadows video and I have been waiting for this one the entire time. I am such a purple eyeshadow hoe. Even though it doesn't always look the best on me, I still love purple eyeshadow. No. Purple is definitely the hardest color for brands to formulate. You have to get the perfect mix of like blue pigment, red pigment, and as a result, I've kind of taken it upon myself to find the best and the worst purple eyeshadows in the world. So today I am bringing to you guys all my favorite and some of my least favorite purple eyeshadows. This is going to be a best and worst. Let's do this. So excited. As with all my other color series videos, I like to break it up into different categories of purples. So I'm going to start off with what I can only describe as like grapey tone purples. So these are going to be kind of like darker, just like true purples, what you would imagine when you think purple, or at least what I imagine when I think purple. So, and the first purple shadows that I really wanted to mention as probably one of my favorite formulas is the Ace Beauté Paradise Fallen palette. So I really admire this collection just because they really went there with the color scheme. Like a lot of brands, when they're like gonna do a purple palette, they put in two purples and then they're like, yeah, that's a purple palette. No. I love that it's kind of a deeper, a little bit cooler tone take on purple shades, but still just really nice and deep and grungy and gorgeous. So I love the shades in here. My probably #1 favorite in the palette is the shade Eve. It's just this beautiful like grapey toned purple shade. But I actually just love pretty much every single shade in here. They all perform beautifully. Shadow is something I mentioned in my favorite blue eyeshadows video. It's kind of right between a plummy indigo purple and blue, and it's just beautiful. So this is definitely one of my favorite purple eyeshadow palettes, and you don't really see a lot of palettes that are just fully purple like this, and I think it's just a really beautiful, concise, but well executed color scheme. So definitely love this one a lot. We just can't get through a color series video without mentioning the Morphe James Charles palette, so let's just do that now, full send. I said it before, I'll say it again, these are, in my opinion, the best colorful eyeshadows I've ever tried. And that's a bold statement, but I'm standing by it for now. Purple shades down here, there's 3 of them. I do wish there were a few more, but I still feel like you can really do a lot of different looks using these 3, especially if you pair it with the black. I really enjoyed this purple shade here called Escape. It's a really gorgeous, just grape toned purple, but what I love about this one is its intensity. I think you'll see in the swatch, but it's this really intense, super pigmented purple, but it blends seamlessly. I've never experienced any patchiness with this one, and usually when purple shades are that deeply pigmented, they do have a really hard time blending out, and this one effortless. So I really like this purple shade here. The shimmer is also gorgeous, probably one of my favorite shimmers in this palette. And then this kind of like amethyst warmer tone purple is fine as well for blending everything out, but nothing in here is patchy. Everything in here performs the way it should. It sits down and does its job.
And do your job.
If you're into the affordable eyeshadow game, I cannot recommend enough the Coastal Scents Creative Me palette. I just tried this one out last month and I've been reaching for this so often when I'm doing Instagram looks. These shadows do not have names as far as I'm aware, but this purple shade here, it's not as good as the James Charles palette, but it's still very nice. These ones don't have quite as much pure pigmentation, so as a result, in the swatch that I'll show on screen right now, it's gonna look terrible. But on the eyes with a brush, these are beautiful. This one does take a little bit more work in blending, but still I think it's probably one of the best affordable purples, and this palette in general I love. So I definitely recommend this palette if you're looking for some good, just like consolidated, very bright color scheme. But if you're willing to go the singles route, Coastal Scents has some really nice purple singles. And I pretty much own like all the matte purple shades that they offer. Definitely recommend the shade here called Deep Grape. Again, it's a grape purple. Wow. And then if you're wanting something that's kind of more on the indigo, straddling between navy blue and purple, I would definitely recommend the shade Edgy Eggplant. Beautiful deepened purple shade. Both of these are amazing, and Coastal Scents is my whole life. So yeah, I will forever have a soft spot for my Sugarpop palette, even though James Charles has just rendered her slightly irrelevant. And even though I don't use this as much, Poison Plum is still such a banger. Again, it's a very dry, and again, it's a very dry formula, so kind of like the Coastal Scents one, it swatches like ass. This is one of the most beautiful, creamy, easy to blend out, and very pigmented shadows on the eyes, and it's also one of the best purples. I also couldn't go through the grape category without mentioning the P. Louise Secret Sinner palette. I know they had a purple in their original palette, but that's been discontinued, and now they have this beautiful, bright, vibrant purple called Addicted in this palette, and it's also one of the best best purples. I would actually say this is pretty much the same thing as the James Charles palette. Super, super pigmented, but they also are very easy to blend. Obviously, P. Louise is known for making very bright, colorful eye looks, so I think this really does correlate with that, and it creates this beautiful, like, punchy, beautiful shock of purple on the eyes, and when you blend it out, it doesn't go, like, kind of patchy or muddy or anything. It just stays that beautiful, vibrant grape shade. So probably one of my favorite singles on earth, though, and definitely my favorite single from Morphe would be the shade Grape Day. This is the ES45. I think I've talked about this a few times on my channel, but
that's not enough.
It's a very, very deepened, super unique shade. And I just showed you a bunch of grape colors, but I swear this is different. Can go patchy if you blend it too much. I feel like darker shades from Morphe in their old formula, not the James Charles formula, can be a little bit harder to work with, but still beautiful. The pigmentation is insane, and it's one of the only shades from Morphe that I really recommend if you're looking for singles.
Country boy, I love you.
And then this isn't necessarily a grape color, but it was a darker purple, and I didn't really know where to fit this one in. So the Morphe IACLYNHILL palette has one of my favorite purple shades, and it doesn't even look purple in the pan. Of course, there is a purple shimmer called Royalty, which it's fine. Real queen of my heart right here is Soda Pop. It's just deep, like eggplant, very, very, very dark purple, and sometimes it doesn't even show up as purple on the eyes, but when I'm doing a purple eye look and I need something to just bring that depth to the outer corner but still look purple and not look black, this is what I reach for every single time. It's just beautiful. Formula in this palette itself is amazing. I do think the James Charles palette is a little bit better in formula, but still, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous eyeshadow palette, and the purple in here is one of my favorites for just doing deepened, like grungier toned purple looks. Alright, moving on, the next category for me are kind of the like amethyst, slightly warmer tone purples. And these are where I feel like brands start to get into the very, very patchy territory, and most of the time brands will like throw one of these shades into their palettes and it's the worst shade in the palette by all means. Some brands just do it so right, so my probably #1 favorite of these purples would be the Huda Beauty DUSK palette. This was a palette that when it came out, everyone was like, oh, it's a purple palette, and there's literally 3 purples in here. So amethyst, again, is kind of a perfect example of what I was talking about, but even though it is a very, very dry formula, it doesn't blend out patchily, and it's not creamy, but it does have a pigmentation to it that's just insane. So I really like these ones. I feel like they're very easy to diffuse on the eyes, and Huda's matte formula is probably one of my favorites. So I really enjoy the amethyst shade here. But this palette also has probably like the most special shade in my collection. This is a shade Twilight. It's kind of like a blue lavender flip, and it's the most stunning shade I've ever seen in my life, and I would die for this one. I guess while I'm on it, I'll also mention the Amethyst Obsessions palette from Huda Beauty, because this is a banger. It's pretty much mostly what I'm wearing on my eyes right now. I'm wearing this shade here, the darker shade, and then the middle shimmer shade. I believe I have this eye look on my channel already. I really, really like this palette. If you're wanting to get an Obsessions palette from Huda, I would probably... This would be my #1 recommendation, just because I feel like it's the most cohesive and there's so many different ways you can take it. Obviously, it is very purple centered, but you can do like a pink eye look as well. I think there's a really good balance of mattes and shimmers in here, different tones, different depths, and it's probably the most cohesive palette that she offers in her line. So if you're wanting one of the Obsessions palettes, but you don't know where to start because there's so freaking many, I would probably recommend this one first, but these shades in here are insane, really, really beautiful, and probably one of the best all purple palettes I've tried. So really love this one. But probably the worst purples I've tried in a long time, and also in the mini palette category, would be from NATASHA DENONA. Or as I like to call her, NATASHA DENONA.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
I have not liked a single mini I've tried from her, but I keep buying them. This is the mini LILA palette that she came out with last year, and I was super disappointed with this one. I just felt like the formula was crap. Purple mattes were very, very patchy, hard to work with. I did eventually get an eye look out of them, but it was hard to get there. And for such an expensive little palette, it shouldn't be super difficult and just unpleasant to work with. So I was not super impressed with these ones. I just felt like they were dry, patchy, and pretty much everything you wouldn't want a purple shadow to be, which I did not enjoy. I feel the same about Viseart's Amethyst palette and then their Petite Pro 2. Those had some not so great purples in there. This palette has been my low-key obsession for the past 2 months, but the Moira Cosmetics Sweet Paradise palette I've been loving as a colorful palette. And this was in my blue eyeshadows video as well, but I wish I'd gotten this one for my yellow eyeshadows video and my red eyeshadows video, because the yellow in here, called Promised Sun, is the good kush. I wanted to mention 2 of the purples in here. Dark Paradise, for one, is not dark So, but it is that same like beautiful like amethyst toned, warmer toned purple shade, and it's very, very bright on the eyes. This is downright like fluorescent fuchsia. I feel like it's also a very creamy formula, so it doesn't get skippy and like skip on the eyes or get patchy, so I really like that. Also, I really like the shade Bon Bon. It's kind of a purple and a pink in one. It can be really, really versatile with different eye looks. And I had to mention this one because it's one of the best palettes I've tried in a long time. I have another disappointing purple, but this was one I was really, really expecting to love. But it was probably the most disappointing shade I tried in the entirety of last year, and that was from the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. The shade I was by far the most excited for in this palette was Hell Right Up Here, and I've talked about this shade in this palette for many videos because it makes me very, very upset, because it just makes me mad. This was the most patchy mess of a purple, and I think I have an eye look on my Instagram using this shade, which eventually I did get it to work, but that was after I layered it on maybe 5 or 6 times because it kept getting patchy every time I tried. Because it kept getting patchy and also very muted every time I tried to blend it out, so it wouldn't look bright and vibrant and like it did in the pan. It would just kind of look muddy on the eyes, which was not what I was expecting, especially from, first of all, such a hyped up palette. I felt like everyone loved this one, and I just couldn't understand why I wasn't loving it too. It was just not aimed at me. It's aimed at people who like a bit more of a muted color scheme but still colorful, whereas I like brighter shades, and these just were not that. So
Be gone, fuck!
the Joy Living Cosmetics Paradise palette is a staple in the color series, and I feel like you guys are probably tired of me talking about this one, but I really, really love the shades in here. The purple in here though is so beautiful. It's definitely very, very warm toned and a little bit darker than the other purples I've just mentioned in this category, but still, and this is just beautiful. I've actually been using it in a kind of weird way. I'll do like an all neutral eye look and then just smudge this onto the lower lash line, and it's just like a fun, like, oh, surprise bitch, I'm wearing purple. Purple shimmer is also beautiful, so I'll swatch that one so you can see it. So this is stunning, although I will concede it's not that hard to do a purple shimmer. I mean, like, shimmers in general are way easier to formulate than mattes. I haven't talked about this palette in quite a while, but I do believe it's still available. This is the Deck of Scarlet edition number 9. But this was their kind of like cooler toned purple themed eyeshadow palette. And there's one purple in here called Crush. It's basically everything I wanted Hellride from the Urban Decay Born to Run to be, but non-patchy and for less money. Supernova is also a stunning, kind of like the Huda Beauty duochrome that I was talking about. It's a lilac pinkish bluish duochrome shift, and it's just stunning on the eyes. So I love this palette overall, and I think it's actually one of the best palettes that they've ever come out with. Alright, now arguably my favorite category, lavender. I've been known to see lavender in a palette and then buy the entire palette for that one shade. So there's that. By far my favorite lavender shade in the world, and also a really good purple palette, like an actual purple palette, not just a I put one purple into my palette, now it's a purple palette. The KYLIE Cosmetics purple palette, and it's the most original name for a palette ever. There are only 9 shades in here, but still I feel like it's one of the best like consolidated cool toned color schemes. I believe it's called Lilac, and this is so gorgeous. It is a little bit chalky, and that tends to be the thing with lavender shades like this. They do have a lot more of a white base to them, so they can be a little bit chalky. In this color's favor, I think that actually works out. It's kind of a staple for my galaxy look, so whenever I do a galaxy look, this is usually on somewhere on my body or my face. But besides Lilac, the other 2 purple mattes in here are actually really, really good. Honestly, the only purple I don't like in here is the shade Amethyst. It's a kind of really bad shimmer shade. Even though I don't use it as often as I would like to, it has survived so many declutters just because it's a really, really good color scheme. I feel like when the color scheme for the Norvina palette was released last year, everyone freaked out because it's purple and it's Anastasia. Most of what everyone was talking about was the shade here called Soul, because it's such a unique shade. You don't really see these like really cool toned, almost gray, periwinkle, bluish purple lavenders, and it's a really, really interesting shade. I am wearing it slightly on my lids today. I have determined that this is awful in the crease on me, just because A, it does have shimmer in it, so there is a tiny bit of shimmer in here. It does help it to blend a little bit better, and that is one thing. This is completely patch free. It doesn't get patchy or blotchy or even like muddy on the eyes. If you are like me and you have a bit more of a warm toned undertone in your skin, so I wear foundations with yellow undertones, this will look a little bit like a zombie on you if you wear it in the crease. So I look a little bit ill when I try and wear this one in the crease, but on the lid, if I'm wearing it with other like warmer tone purple shades or just other purple shades, it looks really, really nice. So I've kind of had to like learn how to use this one in a way that'll flatter me, but still I really enjoy this one here. And Celestial is one of the shimmers, and it's the most gorgeous purple shimmer shade ever. It has a lot of glitter particles in here, so I feel like it really catches the light on the eyes, and just creates this like almost wet looking effect. It is such a special shade and I really enjoy this palette overall. So even though it is not a purple palette because there are only like 3 purples in here, I still think the color scheme is very oriented around those shades and it's just a really well done palette overall. For some reason though, even though that Norvina Soul shade looks awful on me, the shade in the NABLA Soul Blooming palette here called Flowery, which is almost like the same idea, it's kind of a blue toned periwinkle lavender shade that's very cool. I was really nervous for this palette just because overall I'd heard some not great things about it from some of my favorite influencers. I believe J. Kissa hated this one. Again, it's very hard to find these kind of like lavender shades that aren't going to be super chalky and patchy, and for this one I wouldn't want it to be chalky, unlike the KYLIE cosmetic shade. I also really enjoy the shade above it called Garden Gate. Again, this is a duochrome like lavender shade. It has a bit more blue in it, so I would say it is kind of like a baby blue to lavender, but still one of my favorite purples as well. So definitely I would recommend this one a lot. It's a really good spring tone color scheme, and if you're wanting kind of like those pastel aesthetic shades, this is beautiful. And then while I'm talking about NABLA, I'll also mention the Dreamy palette because this really caught my eye when I first saw it because of the purples. Really was not expecting to love the shade here called Lullaby as much as I did, but it's kind of like the most neutral that a purple can get, so I'll wear this one on like no makeup days and it's kind of a nice surprise. It's a very dusty, kind of like mauve toned lavender shade and it's really beautiful. It's very nice and muted so it doesn't look too like loud. It's still very purple and it just looks gorgeous. The 2 purples that I was really excited about were Delirium and Inception. Delirium is probably one of the most special shades I've ever tried. It does have a pretty black base to it, but the purple glitter in here, it's just infused with this really fine micro shimmer. I think I've taken a picture of this one using flash photography and it was just, the effect was insane. So this is my favorite NABLA palette probably, just because the packaging is fucking beautiful. By far one of the worst purple shades I've tried out in a long time though would have to be from the Morphe collection again. I think their singles are really hit and miss, so even though Grape Day is my wife and my bae and my soul, Aphrodite is probably the worst purple I've ever tried in my life. This is just insanely patchy but also not pigmented, so I'll put it down with a brush and then I'll go to blend it out and it just blends away for some reason, so I'm not a huge fan of this one. Again, they're very hit and miss. Hit or miss! I guess they never miss, huh? I think I bought this one as like a possible dupe for the NATASHA Denona Tropics palette, but this was just not good, so yeah. Probably my favorite single eyeshadow in my collection besides Grape Day would also be a purple, and this is from Anastasia Beverly Hills. I don't buy a lot of their single shadows just because they're freaking expensive, like they're $12 each, and that's too much. But I was in Sephora just like looking at their eyeshadows and I swatched this one and I immediately bought it. This is the shade Enchanted. It's the most beautiful duochrome purple shade. It has this blue, deep blue purple shift. And it's just really multi-dimensional on the eye. So even though it is a darker shimmer shade and I don't tend to wear darker shimmers, this is so beautiful. And I've never been so passionate about a single eyeshadow. This. Alright, so the last one that I had to mention is probably my least favorite shade I've tried in a long time, and it's from the Glamlight Pizza palette, which I'm so sad that I didn't like. It's a pizza. But I really don't like the shade Red Onions. Again, as I mentioned, I feel like shimmers are not that hard to formulate. Most brands get shimmers correct. I don't know how. It's so bad, but it has almost no color payoff, and when I go to swatch this one, I've tried to use this one with a finger. It doesn't look nice on the eyes. It kind of looks like those eyeshadow palettes I would get from Claire's when I was little, which is not good. Alright guys, that is it for this episode of the color series and all the purple eyeshadows. The best and the worst is the best of times. It was the worst of times. Haha, it's lit! And I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please give it a thumbs up because these are hard to make. Please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed down below and also follow me on Instagram to see makeup looks like this purple one posted semi-regularly. And if you made it to the very end of this video, you get the bonus meme. I love you. Bye.
How it feels to chew 5 gum. New 5 gum. Stimulate your senses.